I've had a lot of requests to add the perfect crochet edging around the neckline, but you can use the same technique for finishing the armhole of a sleeveless top too. Since the curve must exist first, the focus is on creating the edging and completing the bind off so it lays flat. Both necklines and armhole curves are concave, but at the end I will show you how to apply what you learned to convex edges too. In How to Machine Knit the Perfect Crochet Edging and Bind Off, I covered the same technique but only in the context of straight, beginning and ending edges. In addition, in How to Add the Perfect Crochet Edging to the Selvage, we opened a world of possibilities so you can pick up any edge and extend it with the invisible join. The links for these videos and the playlist can be found in the video description below. Let's start with the basic information. I am working on a Brothers 270 bulky knitting machine using worsted weight yarn. The main tension is 9.1 for the stockinette stitch. However, the crochet edging is usually 1 full tension tighter. In other words, main tension -1, which is 8.1. I've made a large enough sample to calculate the gauge of the edging. 60 stitches measure 16.5 inches, and that means there are 3.64 stitches per inch. We'll come back to that later. First, measure the neckline for the piece you plan to edge. It can be a combination of pieces that contribute to the neckline. For a pullover, you may just have a front and a back. For a cardigan, you may have 3 edges to measure. For a raglan, you will have 2 additional sections to account for the sleeves. To measure, hold the measuring tape on its edge and measure right along the edge of the neckline. This is called walking the measuring tape. For this example, I am only working on the front neckline and it measures 20.5 inches. Multiply this measurement by the gauge of the edging to determine how many stitches you need to start. In this case, it is 74 stitches. Then, decide how wide the edging will be. In this case, I am going to match my bottom edge, and it is 1 1/4 inches wide, which in this gauge is 5 crochet cast-on rows or 5 latched rows. There is less work if the edging is narrower, but for this demonstration, the edging is relatively wide, so you can see the whole process. Now, find the finished edge of the neckline. Knowing the width, pretend the edging is in place already and walk the measuring tape along this imaginary line. In my case, the finished edge for the front is 18 inches. The finished edge for the back is 11 inches. 18 plus 11 is 29 inches. This is important because the edging has practically no stretch. The length of the finished edge determines if the opening is large enough to accommodate the circumference of the head. Here's one more check. Multiply the total neckline measurement by the gauge. If the total number of stitches exceeds the number of needles on the main bed of the machine, divide the edging into smaller sections. Since the Brother 270 has only 114 needles, the neckline must be done in 2 pieces, front and back. Now, subtract the finished neckline length from the length of the neckline. Multiply the result by the gauge to determine the number of decreases. In this case, my neckline measures 20.5 inches and the finished neckline measures 18. That's a difference of 2.5 inches. 2.5 inches times 3.64 stitches per inch equals 9 stitches. So I need to decrease 9 stitches. This is where the width of the edging comes into play. As a guideline, decreases should be placed no closer than every other latched row. Since there will be 5 latched rows, I have 2 opportunities to decrease. So my first decrease row will have 5 decreases and my second one will have 4. But if I wanted a narrower edging, say 3 latched rows, there would be only 1 opportunity to do all the decreases. The last consideration is where to place the decreases. I avoid the straight sections and aim for the curves. Use markers to keep you on track. Now it's time to knit. I've pulled out 74 needles because that is the number of stitches I need along the neckline edge. Work the perfect crochet cast-on across these needles. Here's how. If you have them, Place the needle stoppers from your garter bar set onto the needle bed to stabilize the needles. Now I'm going to make a little V, bring it up between the first and the second needle, and begin latching. Now I want to pull down slack because I do not want this edge to be super tight. I want it to be firm but not tight. I'm going to work all the way across the 74 needles. When you get to this end, you want to complete that one and just bring the loop up and hang it on the needle. Bring the feeder yarn between the two end needles and thread up. Once I have my crochet cast on in place, then I can hang my neckline. So with the right side facing the machine, I'm going to begin to hang this entire edge. Begin on the left edge. Only pick up half of the stitch and hang it on the machine. I like to hang a second stitch right next to it to prevent the hung stitch from pulling out of shape. Then we're going to the other side and hang 2 stitches near this end. Now, go to the center stitches. I'm removing the needle stopper at this point so I can see the numbers on the needles. Since the center stitches are on waste yarn, I know it has a 1-to-1 relationship with the needle bed, so hang these stitches next. Once the center is hung, work each half by hanging the stitches at the half of the half, and then the half of the half of the half, and so on. Pull down on the stitches to make sure each needle has its own unique stitch and rearrange as needed. Once all the neckline stitches are hung, push the knitting back to prepare for the first row. If you forgot to do your latch tooling and you hung your edge first and then said, oh, I forgot my latch tooling, just pull the edge out and put the latch tool behind it right here. The tension is set to 8.1, which is the tension for the edging. We are ready to knit. All right, here goes. That was a little bit of a heavy row, but we made it. Now we are going to do a second row of latching. Pull the knitting out and drop the needle stoppers into place. Leave the knitting closer to the hooks because we are going to latch behind the knitting, so the edging is on the public side of the neckline. And all we're going to do is latch all the way across to the end. And we're almost there. When we get to the end, you're going to latch around the second one and then bring the loop under the knitting and onto the end needle. You still are going to bring the yarn between the end 2 needles and off to the side. Now, you take these off and our carriage is on the left. So, what we have to do is put our carriage into hold so that we could take a free pass. And we're going to move our carriage to the right. Pick up our yarn. We can take our carriage out of hold and knit the next row. That's our second row. Remember when we did our preparation, we were going to work the decreases after completing 2 latched rows. We are there. It is time to decrease the 5 stitches as marked with the orange markers. Because I'm using the markers as guides for the decreases, first I will manually transfer the stitches to an adjacent needle and leave the needle in work. It does not matter in which direction you transfer them. Once all the transfers are made, we need to move the stitches to fill the empty needles. It's very easy to move them with the garter bar. Put the needle stoppers in place, making sure the empty needles are in work with the rest of the needles. In the process, push all the working needles out to the hold position. Then, push the knitting back toward the needle bed to open all the latches and prepare for the transfers. even though I pushed my knitting back, I'm going to open all my latches just to make sure. Okay, and the farthest right empty needle happens to be here. Now that just happens to be working out so I can use just one garter bar here. Okay, so right here. So I can move this one right to there and I don't have to touch these. But I'm going to do a safeguard. I'm going to put my eyelet tool right in the hook of the last needle with a stitch on it here, because when I go to pull these out, that one could pop off and helps prevent that from happening. So I have to move all these stitches. It doesn't matter whether I'm centered at this point or not, okay, because I'm not using this as the guideline. So I'm just pulling these all off. They are tight because my tension is tighter. Okay, so here I go. And you see how this tool prevents that from falling off? Okay, so now I have my last stitch over here. And see, even though it fell off, I can put it back on. So let that one be there. Okay, now I'm going to move this over. Take all these off. Move this over. One needle. Put them back in the hooks. And push these on to the needles. That one has 2 on it. Okay. Then I'm going to lift it again. That one didn't come off all the way. There we go. There we go. Move this down again. Put them in the latches. Push the next set down until the next empty needle is reached, which is right here. Lift it. Move them down 1. Put them in the latches. Push these on until the next empty needle is reached, which is right here. Move these down. Push these on to the next empty needle, which is right here. So I want those to go on. Lift this up. Move these down 1. Yeah, that's my last one there. And then I can push these on. So as you can see, I decreased 5 and I have 5 empty needles down here. I'm going to pay close attention to my needle down here because see, it did pop off. But all I have to do is bring that back up and it is back in place. Now, get ready for the next step. Remove the needle stopper and push the empty needles out of work. Pull the knitting away from the machine and replace the needle stoppers. Now, I can go ahead and latch. So on this end, I'm going to put my tool in between the first and second one and pull down. Then I'm going to go across the bed, but I'm working behind the knitting yet again. I'm getting down to my last few stitches. And when I get to the end, I'm just going to put that one up on the end. Now, if you wanted to do the invisible join, you could then latch it onto another needle and hold it with a stitch marker, just like we did in the other video. Okay, so now we push our work back, we remove our plates, and we're ready almost to knit. But once again, our carriage is on the left and our yarn is on the right. So we need to take a free pass. I put it into hold and I'm just moving my carriage across. Take it out of hold, across. Okay, that's number 3. So on this next row, we're not going to do anything except bring out our work. Unthread our machine, pull down some slack, and latch tool behind the knitting once again. Push our knitting back and our latching back. And pull our plates off. And of course our yarn is on our right. Take a free pass to bring our carriage to meet up with our yarn. Thread up the carriage and flip it back from hold, and we're going to knit our 4th row. All right, so after our 4th row, that's our next opportunity to do our decreases. So once again, this time I'm going to follow the green markers. That's why I made them in different colors. So right here, 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 and here. Now, the decreases are on the inside. The latch tooling will cover them up, so you won't see them, so you don't have to be that particular. But what do we have to do now? We have to close the gap. So here is our last stitch right here. So I'm putting my tool on it, and I'm going to bring out all these other needles right there. And I think I'm going to just leave that one alone because I know I don't have to move anything there. Get my garter bar. Now, these can then be pushed back. Okay? Open all my latches. And I'm just going to put my garter bar in place and pull these onto the garter bar. Being careful when I get down here so I don't accidentally drop anything. Beautiful. Push back to open the latches and lift the garter bar off. Move it down, set it into place, push the first set off onto the needles. And so I'm closing the gap. Here's my next empty needle. Lift that off, move the stitches down, push the next set onto the machine. I have these 4 needles down here that I'm going to take out of work. Now we are ready to do our 5th latched row. But our 5th latched row is also our bind off row. When you're doing this edging to get that perfect edge, we have to turn our knitting. Now you can turn it a couple different ways. You can turn it with your garter bar, or you can turn it by taking it off on waist knitting and rehanging it. It only takes you an extra 5 minutes if you have to turn it that way. But I happen to have a garter bar, so I'm going to use my garter bar to do this work. Okay, so I'm going to put my garter bar in place and pull the knitting off. Because it's so tight, I don't think I really need all the weight, but I could be surprised. Push it forward to open all the latches, and now I can turn my work. So I'm going to put the heads of the needles in the bases of those little grooves, and I'm going to flip it forward and pull down. Now this is where the weight helps. All right, let's see what we have. It looks pretty clear. I'm making sure I've got all my stitches on. Now the true test is, does the garter bar slip out? And it's not. It slipped out. Good. So we just turned our work. All right. Now we can push this all back. So now we're going to do the bind off around the gate peg. And this is a gate peg. Bring the yarn on the right side of the gate peg. Transfer the stitch to the tool, and then bring it down. You don't want to do this too tight, so you want to bring down the slack from above so you don't put too much tension on it. See that loop that's left on that gate peg? That helps control the tension so it doesn't become too tight. Now we're making sure our yarn is to the right of the next gate peg. We put the hook of the latch tool into the hook of the needle, and we pull it through to transfer it. Both of them go behind the latch and then pull down. And this is done with no tension from up on the mast. So you hook the hooks in the hook, transfer the stitch to the latch tool, make sure the yarn is on the right side of the gate peg. If you're working from the right, it would be on the left side if you were working from the left. This technique can be done in both directions. Since I'm right-handed, it just seems to be easier for me to do it from the right. And we're going to do this all the way across. So when we get to the end, we can cut, leaving ourselves a generous yarn tail, just so that we can weave in the end as we desire later. Okay, now I'm going to pull that end through, and let's look at what we have. Right now, it's hung on my gate pegs, and you can see the edging. So now let's just pop it off. So I've just taken this off the machine, and you can still see my markers are still there. We can remove this waste yarn. And can you see how absolutely beautiful that curve is, and see how nice and flat that lays? And that's how you do the crochet edging on the curve. Now, to solve the mystery of the convex curve, take the difference between the length of the finished edge and that of the edge and multiply it by the gauge of the edging. And that result is the number of increases that need to be placed along the curve. That was easy, wasn't it? I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please take a moment to subscribe and ring the bell to receive notifications of upcoming videos and events. Happy machine knitting!